Hi, Rebecca.
It's good.
Phyllis, Rainey, Jason. I don't know everybody. Ruth, Bonnie, and everyone
Every-
else that's coming. Okay. Um, and the Judy Harris Brooks series, Judy Brooks will long be remembered as an educator and civic leader who was actively involved in finding solutions to complex issues in her community. She served on the select board. She served in the league, very, very active, and in so many other things. And she taught many, many students over the years. And so we thought the best person to name this series after, if somebody was interested in all the aspects of our community and all the things in it, would be Judy. And we got permission from her family, from Barry before he passed, and from his daughter and son, just to ask them if it was okay that we use her name that way. And they approved, and that's part of it. I think she would be proud that we appreciated her. But we have today two distinguished people. We have the president of the Amherst Regional, is that what it's called, Jennifer? Regional School Committee,
Um,
Shiao.
Thank you. So I'm chair of the Amherst School Committee, not the Regional School Committee, but
Oh,
I'd be
okay,
happy to talk about the distinction between the two. That's one of the things I wanted to start
that's
with.
good. And we have Deb Leonard, who is the secretary for the Amherst
Amherst, right?
School Committee. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Um, they are going to talk to us about things they want to say, and then we're going to open it up. So if you could ask questions, so write down and be ready to ask some questions, because we want to, what our purpose is to enlighten people as well as to ask you to give as much support as you can to our schools, and especially with the town council and on the other people, encourage people to promote our schools and help our children. And I'm going to ask Jennifer, the president of our school committee, or whatever. You can explain it so I
Okay,
won't make that mistake again. I'm writing
great.
it down.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you to the League for having Deb and me speak in the Judy Brooks series. It's an honor to be here. And I personally really appreciate all the work that the League does to support civic engagement in Amherst. So Deb and I haven't really coordinated, but I thought it would be good to just start with sort of a high level overview and grounding, just to make sure we're all on the same page and starting with the same information, because things are a little complex in Amherst and for various reasons. So first, I just want to start back up and talk about the two school committees. So Amherst has two school committees. There's the Amherst School Committee, which is made up of 5 Amherst people that are elected by voters. And the Amherst School Committee oversees the 3 elementary schools. So that 5-person committee, their only job is to oversee the 3 elementary schools. And those seats are elected all at once every 2 years at the same time that all of the town council seats are also up for election. So all the seats turn over at the same time. Then those 5 members are also members of the regional school committee. The regional school committee oversees the middle school and the high school and also includes 4 other members, 2 from Pelham, 1 from Shutesbury, and 1 from Leverett. The Pelham, Shutesbury, and Leverett members are members of their own town's elementary school committee, and they send one representative to the regional, or they send representatives to the regional school committee. Pelham gets 2 representatives, Shutesbury 1 and Leverett 1. That's just the way it's always been in terms of the number. So there's 9 members on the regional school committee. That's a separate body, a separate school committee that has a separate chair and separate meetings, and that school committee oversees the middle school and the high school. To further complicate things, we have a superintendent who is superintendent of 3 school districts. Our superintendent, who's currently Dr. Ziamara Herman, she is superintendent of the Amherst Elementary School District, the Amherst Pelham Regional School District, which is the middle school and high school, and the Pelham Elementary, which is like one school within the municipality of Pelham. So those 3 school districts fall under our superintendent. They're three separate school districts with three separate school committees, because Pelham has their own school committee, their own 5-member school committee that oversees Pelham Elementary. Shutesbury and Leonard Elementary are not within the purview of this superintendent. They have their own superintendent. They're not under under the same purview, but their secondary students do go to the regional schools. So anyway, to further complicate things, there's another committee that's referred to as Union 26, the Union 26 committee, and that's 6 members, and it's made up of sorry, I'm blanking. It's made up of
the chairs from,
oh, thank you. It's made up of the chair, vice chair, and secretary from the Amherst Elementary School Committee and the chair, vice chair, and secretary from the Pelham School Committee. So those 3 officers from those 2 elementary school committees jointly serve on the Union 26 committee. And the Union 26 committee, as a 6-member body, jointly with the regional school committee, the 9-member body, is in charge of employing the superintendent. So the Union 26 committee sort of represents the 2 elementary districts, Amherst and Pelham, and together with the regional school committee, which represents the middle school and high school, those 2 committees jointly employ the superintendent. And deal with, and those 2 committees are the ones that make decisions about who we hired for superintendent and approve the superintendent's contract, et cetera. The Union 26 committee generally only convenes on issues with superintendent's employment. So that's some high level. These are things that it took me a while of paying attention in Amherst to figure all of that out, and I just sort of absorbed a lot of it as I went. So there's 2 different school committees, and therefore we have 2 different budgets that we vote on that are managed in sort of very different ways. The Amherst Elementary budget is approved by the Amherst School Committee, so just that 5-member committee. And we just last week the school committee approved a budget that reflects an increase of 6% over last year. And that 6% increase would result in some reductions in staff, but not teachers, not student-facing positions. So we approved a budget that does not lay off any teachers. It's not a level services budget, because a level services budget would have required, I believe, an 8 or 10% increase in funding, and we just didn't think it was feasible. So we approved what we're calling it a 6% budget. The way the charter is written, the Amherst Home Rule Charter, what happens is the Amherst School Committee, so remember that's just the elementary school committee, approves a budget. We submit that to the town manager. But that submission is really more like a request or a recommendation. The town manager has the ability and the power, based on the charter, to decide how much money for the school district to include in the town budget. So we sent the town manager a 6% budget. The town manager is going to do what the town manager does, and he's going to include some number in the town budget. We don't know what that number is yet. It may or may not be the 6% increase that we voted on. The town manager then submits his budget proposal to the full town council. This is the full town budget, including all departments. And then the town council has their own process. They refer it to the finance committee. The finance committee holds a public hearing. The finance committee makes a recommendation to the town council. Then the town council votes on it. And all that has to happen by June 31st. According to the charter, the town council is not permitted to raise the total amount of the town budget or any line item. So, but that being said, it's unclear to us on the school committee if the town council could approve a larger amount for the elementary schools than the town manager recommends. That's actually a little unclear to me. So that's sort of simple in that the school committee approves. We send it to the town manager, he does whatever he does, and then the town council has their own process. The regional school district and the regional school committee is a little bit more complicated, because the regional schools, the middle school and high school, are funded by 4 towns, Amherst, Pelham, Leonard, and Shutesbury. And so all 4 towns, chip in money to fund those 2 schools. The There is a regional agreement. We refer to the regional agreement a lot. That's was like from the 1950s, I think.
No, this is
that
the
dictates.
Judy Brooks
Hey,
conversation.
Ronnie, think you could mute?
The mobile market is speaking.
Or if someone, maybe someone could
Oh,
mute Ronnie.
okay. She
Oh, there
did.
she goes. Okay, so there's a regional agreement that spells out how to calculate how much each town will contribute to the regional school budget. And that's pretty straightforward. But in the past many years, under the leadership of Dr. Morris and Dr. Slaughter, that formula wasn't followed for various reasons. The formula wasn't followed, and instead the 4 towns had to sort of each individually approve going off the formula, doing something other than the formula. It's called an amendment, amending the regional agreement, and it was just very frustrating and risky, and all the 4 towns had to agree, and it was sort of down to the wire as to whether all 4 towns would agree. So that happened. That's the past. That happened for many years. This year, DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and they're the state body that oversees school districts. DESE has told us, hey, you guys have to quit doing that thing where you don't follow the agreement, the regional agreement, and you have to follow the regional agreement that dictates how much money each town contributes. So just 2 days ago, time has no meaning, the Regional School Committee approved a budget that reflects a 6.5% increase over last year that will involve, again, some reductions, but some reductions, possibly even a few student-facing positions, but we've managed to preserve what we think are the most important student-facing positions. Again, a level services budget with no cuts would have required like 10%, a 10% increase over last year. We didn't think that was sustainable, that was achievable. So the school committee approved a 6.5% budget. And that's going to result in the town of Amherst contributing around 4.8% more this year than they did last year. And the way that towns talk about money from year to year is just they just talk about percentages. They don't talk about actual dollars. I don't know why. That's just the way it works. So Amherst is going to see a 4.8% increase in the amount they're going to contribute to the school committee has proposed a budget that will require the town of Amherst to increase their contribution to the regional school committee by 4.8%. The town of Pelham, what we approved will require them to increase their contribution by like 23%, 22.97%, which is a lot. It's a lot for a small town. It's a lot for any town, and it's a big increase from one year to the next. And Pelham, Leverett, and Shutesbury also, I think in the low double digits, possibly. I don't remember the exact numbers, but higher than Amherst's increase, and higher than they have previously said they could afford. But at the meeting on Monday with DESE, we basically were told that we don't really have a choice in the matter. So when it comes to the regional budget, there's 2 complicating factors, or there's 2 things we think about, which is the size of the pie, the total size of the budget, and then how you allocate the pie, how you split how much each town's gonna contribute. So we voted on the size of the pie. And how you split the pie, we don't have a choice about, because we need to follow the agreement that's been in place for a while. So so nothing's settled yet. We still have to wait for the Amherst Town Council and the other towns' town meetings to vote and approve the budgets. We don't yet know exactly how that's going to shake out. If the budgets that the school committees approved are passed, I think we will have gotten out of this pretty well. We would have done pretty well, especially compared to other towns in the Valley. Other towns in Western Massachusetts are seeing some really difficult cuts, having to cut teacher positions and cut programming. If our budgets pass, I think we'll be in relatively good shape, but everything's year to year right now, and next year we could be back in the same or similar position. So I'm going to pause and ask Deb if there's anything you want to add to the.
I think you touched on it, Jennifer, but And sorry, I'm not muting because my computer's not letting me, and I'd have to leave the meeting and go back again, but tell me if the background noise is distracting and I'll do that. The process of going from the previous method to the agreement in the region was why some of those increases over last year were so high. Normally that's not the way it is. And there's been times where they've been trying to do it slowly, but we were not given that option this time. So we just did it. And one would expect going forward that the increases from year to year for all the towns would be more or less the same. That's all.
Now, what happens if one of the towns, particularly I'm thinking of Pelham, say to the school committee, like, we just can't give you a 23% increase? What did they suggest to you if a town can't give that kind of money?
So we're in the fortunate, well, okay, so the answer is to approve the budget that we voted this year, we only need 3 of the 4 towns to approve. If 3 of the 4 towns approve and the 4th one doesn't, the 4th town, you have to pay it anyway. But if 2 of the towns vote down the budget, then we have to essentially go back to the drawing board and we have to pass another budget that we think will get approval. There are all sorts of posting deadlines and requirements when it comes to town meetings. Particularly, you have to post the warrant like 45 days in advance. So if one of the non-Amherst towns doesn't pass our budget at their spring town meeting, if 2 towns don't pass it, the other towns will have to call a special town meeting, and there are posting requirements. And essentially, if we get to July 1st of 25 without an approved budget, what happens is DESE puts us on what's called a 1/12 budget, which means that DESE allows us to spend 1/12 of last year's budget, right? 1/12 of last year's budget to sort of keep us going while we try to pass a new budget. But that's a very, very bad situation to be in, because for many different reasons, like 1/12 of last year's budget isn't enough to sustain us for a month, and then we have it's not a good situation to be in. I'm hopeful that at least 3 of the 4 towns will pass the regional school budget that we voted on Monday.
Okay. Cynthia, unmute. You're on mute. Cynthia, you're on mute. Okay, now.
Okay, sorry about that. What role does the union play in this, in the budgeting? What the input from teachers and the people that are involved in the union?
So I don't think the union specifically is directly involved. I do know that the superintendent, Dr. Z, does work very closely with the building principals on where cuts can be made, and or where those proposed cuts should, Dr. Z first gave us a level services budget with no cuts, and then she presented, this is what it would look like if we stuck to Amherst's initial guidance that they would only give us 4% more. She said, if we're only getting 4% more, these are all the cuts we're going to have to make. And that list was devised by Dr. Z consulting with the principals. And then when it looked like we were going to go somewhere in between 4 and 10%, she also consulted the principals to see what we could put back, what we could restore or not have to cut from that list. So those are the principals. The union, has come to the school committee meetings with their T-shirts and signs, and they've spoken at public comment. I mean, individuals, staff, educators have, and the union has rallied people to come give their input at school committee meetings, and I assume they will also do that at Amherst Town Council and hopefully the select board meetings as well, but they don't have a direct or formal role.
Okay, thanks.
Ash?
Jennifer, thank you. What kind of impact do you see on the programs given the cuts in staff that that you're having to take?
Deb, do you want to try that question?
Not very-
Unmute.
Yeah, she's working on it, I think.
Oh, she's working on, that's right. She said she had problems.
Yeah, I should do it. So, as of these two budgets that we've proposed, or that we've voted, both the elementary and the regional, I don't think we're not expecting any cuts to programming. There was, one of the regional budget proposals included, cutting, am I getting this right? Cutting Chinese 1 and Chinese 1 and Latin 1 at the middle school. So currently a middle school student can take one full equivalent of one full high school year of a world language in 7th and 8th grade combined. And right now students can pick from, I think, one of several languages, and two of the languages they can pick are Chinese and Latin. And if they complete those languages in middle school, they can start at the second level. They can start Chinese 2 or Latin 2 at high school. There was discussion of cutting those languages from the middle school, which would then have downstream effects as to how many students could take those courses in the high school. But if the regional budget gets passed, that will be preserved. I will say that this is my 4th year on the school committee, and I went back and looked at what has happened in past years. And there was maybe my first year on the school committee, they wanted to reduce the specials teachers in the elementary school. The specials are, chorus, library, technology, gym, and art. There's 5 special teachers at each elementary school. They wanted to reduce the total number by half an FTE and make one of the teachers cover 2, or 2 of the teachers cover 2 schools. It was a little bit of a complex way that they're going to try to cover this. So that actually a cut in programming, because they were going to maintain the program, but they were going to make the teachers have less downtime and less planning time and cover more classes. But fortunately, that year, the school committee was able to push back and figure out a way to save that, to prevent that reduction from happening. This year, at elementary, they wanted to reduce all of the specials teachers and the band and orchestra teacher from a full-time job to a 90% job, a 0.9 FTE, 90% job, and that would have saved some amount of money. And that was one of the places they're looking for cuts. So, and that has fortunately been, hopefully will be restored if the Amherst budget passes. So it just seems like, specials is not an easy, but one of the first places that gets targeted. And you need a school committee that will push back, and you need the community to come out and push back on those things.
Yeah, that was my next question to you. What kind of things could individuals, or not just league members, but people who live in Amherst, what can they do?
I'm talking a lot. Deb, do you want to take that one?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Stay engaged is the most important part. Understand or ask what the relevant timelines are and votes are. There will be a budget hearing for both the schools, an Amherst budget meeting for both the school budgets. And there's the time for the community to show up and say, we think this is important, please fund our schools. There's been a lot of discussion over the years. This is just my first term, my second year on the school committees. There's been a lot of discussion over the years about the increases that the schools have asked for and why. So that's an important conversation for us to continue to have with our towns as to why the cost of education is going up. There are a lot of fixed costs in our budget that we have absolutely no control over. So when health insurance and other fixed parts of our budget increase beyond the guidance of the towns, then it becomes a matter of, well, the only place really we're able to take it is from staffing, and that creates a lot of tension in the community, you know, between
Mm.
the town council and between the school committee, but also within the school committees as to who should take the cut, which building, or within each building. And so you really want to avoid as much as you can the idea of my team is more important or my needs are more important than yours. But in times of limited resources, that's really about all we can do, except at the level of advocating with our state representatives and with our state Senate to the budgeting process to increase funding across the state. One of the things that's become clear over the last 3 or 4 years, certainly since I've been paying attention, is that this idea that the rates at which 3/4, 2/3 of the districts in the Commonwealth are funded from the states is more or less constant, meaning our increases from year to year are very, very, very small. And then our costs are very high. And again, there's a lot of parts of it, including tuitions to charter and vocational schools that we have absolutely no control of. So when those costs increase and the state funding remains the same, it puts a lot of strain again on us internally as a town, but also on us internally as a district.
Mm. Andrea, I have a follow-up.
Okay, wait, Martha has her hand up and then I'll go
Right.
to you, Ash, okay?
Thank you. And Jennifer, that was an amazing explanation for this very complicated process. But and so I'm concerned now about the process from here on. I mean, the school board has worked hard. You know, tried your best to come up with something that you consider reasonable. And then it goes completely out of your hands. And the elementary budget, and I guess even Amherst's contribution to the regional budget, get decided by our town manager. Because the town council then cannot, in the end, increase the budget.
You're right. The Amherst Elementary budget gets recommended by the town manager. The town council can simply not approve it. They can vote no on approving it. And then they have to just keep trying until it's approved. So that's a possibility. I wanted to say that I think an important element that I think is happening here is that the town council and the town manager have, for the past many years, insisted on giving the same percent increase in operating budget to the 4 town departments, the town hall, the elementary school, the regional schools, and the police. Everyone gets the same percent increase, no matter what your needs are, and they say that that's fair, and that's like the only way that they can or want to do a budget. But I think there has been a groundswelling of pushback on that. And I want to shout out Anna Devlin Gothier, town councilor in District 5. She's leading a push to counter that narrative and to say, no, you don't have to give the same percent increase to all the town departments. The schools have a need. I mean, we all have needs, right? But the schools have a need. They have fixed costs that can't that are mandatory things that we have to pay that can't be cut. So she's pushing the town council to not give the same, that all the departments the same. And at the last town council meeting, there were a lot of comments about how equality is not equity. Giving all towns the same, giving all departments the same is not equity. So yes, you're right. I am a little worried about what's going to happen now, because it's for the elementary, it's up to the town manager and the town council to do the right thing. For the region, also, in the regional budget, the town manager doesn't decide or propose the amount. The town council has to simply vote on the budget that the school committee has proposed, approve it or not. Or do they vote on that separately, or does that just get put into the town budget? I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, that's the case where the town manager is not part of the process, but the town council does ultimately vote on it.
Because in last fall, there was the public forum where we had what, 30, 40, maybe 50 members of the public speak pleading for the schools. And, you know, is it going to do any good if we have another public forum? Are the right people listening? Will any minds be changed? You know, I don't mean to sound cynical. Yeah. But
Yeah, no, you're allowed to sound
I
cynical.
just wonder, you know, what influence people have. And I will also, let me just quote Anna Devlin Gauthier, our counselor. I remember what she said. She said she'd rather have school buses driving over the potholes than have the roads fixed nice and smooth with no school buses at all, was the way she put it. You know, it's tough choices, and we all hate the potholes, but.
So do they take that literally, and now there are more potholes than they've ever had?
Oh, I know, I don't know.
Don't let me start, because I think I'm in New York half the time now. I mean,
Yes, yes,
it wasn't like this 14 years ago, but
Yeah.
anyway, okay.
But anyway, thank you
Okay,
for
okay.
all the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Martha.
Ash and then Cynthia, sorry.
Let me, I think Cynthia had her hand up before I did, so
Oh,
go ahead.
okay,
Cynthia.
okay,
And then Adrian.
thank you. Thank you, Leonard.
This is kind of a speculation question. I don't know how you all work this into your planning, but what happens if all the Title I money goes away from the national level, as we've heard in the news media? I mean, this is possible. So who steps in, and what happens to all the kids there that are in those programs? Well, how is that handled on a local level?
I say we don't know entirely because we've never been there. One of the things that the governor has said is that she's committed to stepping in when federal funds have been withheld to support all the area, well, as a means of support. There is, excuse me, not enough money in Massachusetts to replace all of our federal funding. So there's going to be some choices that need to be made. The benefit, however, is that the fair share money needs to be spent for very certain things, infrastructure and schools. So the places where the Commonwealth might have to replace federal funds come from the whole of what Massachusetts has available to it in terms of funding. But we have a little pot set aside that might help balance that out, but we really don't know. Unless Jennifer has anything more.
Yeah.
Okay, fingers
So,
crossed.
Andrea?
Okay, go.
Thank you. Thanks. Actually, Cynthia, your question was a good one before the one I have. And it's really something that the League's Racial Justice Committee is very concerned about. And that is, with all the threats about the attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and those are also directed to the schools and so on. Is there any impact of that yet on the likelihood of state funds being withheld for programs that support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the schools? Is that something that you're worried about? And it's something that if you were, this is where RJC would be willing to support whatever needs to be done or what could be done.
Jennifer, have you been following that?
I haven't been following in terms of state funding.
Yeah.
That supports DEI programs. Have you?
I have not, but again, I believe Governor Healy has made a commitment to maintaining our legal commitments that we've made towards certainly protecting rights. I don't know the extent to which they would have to go to do that. Sorry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the term is completely undefined and vague, and so it's, can be targeted in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly, as far as we know so far, there have been no changes at any of our school districts. We're not complying in advance. And my feeling is don't comply in advance or at all. So I haven't seen any
Mhm.
changes due to anything coming out of the White
Okay.
House.
Okay.
Thank you.
Milan, did you say Adrian? Did Adrian have her hand up?
Yes.
Oh,
Hi. First of all, I want to thank Jennifer and Deb for your incredible work on behalf of the school children in our town. And one follow-up, I'm so glad the issue about Anna Devlin Gauthier's position on school funding. And I have to direct the attention of my league friends here. We have a school position, a very excellent school position. In fact, it's on pages 12 and 13 in our program book. And if we can throw our support behind her position for the schools going forward, perhaps this year is too late. That's something certainly that I think the league needs to examine. And if we find through a review that her new policy to be, if that's the case, the league can throw its support behind it following review. My question is this to Jennifer or Deb. I don't think you've had a seat at the table at budget time. I know there's been some discussion. Where are we at now? Will you be part of the budget coordinating committee? Is there any other town table at which the school committee should have a seat? Because your voices are important. And we want quality education for our students. But every year, for all the years I've been here in Amherst, we struggle through the same issues, but they have become more dire with each year that I live in this town. So, what's the seat that you need to have to make your voices be heard and to push some policy changes in budgeting for schools and not having level funding across every department every year? Thank you for that. Any answer you can provide.
Thank you. Jennifer, shall I?
Yes, please do.
I am a member of the budget coordinating group. We have met, I believe, twice since January. So there's a timing issue that I think needs to be addressed. Because as I think one of the people mentioned, there was activism in the fall around supporting the budget, the school budget, by members of the community at the time that the town council was considering and writing the financial guidelines to the town manager, with which they direct the town manager to create the budget. So there's activism then, but in terms of us actually having a say, I would say I've been told that that's what the budget coordinating group is supposed to do. But I'm not sure how that fits in with the timeline. Because by the time we've met, the budget guidelines have been set. So I don't know. And I've been unable to find the answer to this question, but anecdotally, I've heard that school committee members in the past under representative town meeting, that they had more of an impact on their budget than we currently seem to. But I don't know that that's true. It's just something that I've heard.
okay. Jason?
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm curious to know we have young kids in the elementary school right now. We've been pretty active in going to town council meetings, advocating for an increased budget for the schools as opposed to that 4% across the board for everybody. Frankly, I think that all that does, I don't think it's fair, and all it does is seem to produce equally bad outcomes across the board as opposed to improving anything. Our roads are terrible. Our schools, the middle school is literally falling apart. We're building $100 million new school that we're going to be paying for the next 30 years. And we're being told that positions are potentially going to be cut. So something has to change. And it seems like this is a pretty long standing problem in town. So I have a number of questions, but one of the first things I'd like to know is, aside from advocating for town council and the town manager to reallocate funding to the schools, what are the schools and the school committee and superintendent doing to help or make a plan to avoid this in the future? And then as a second question, where does the funding, like for the middle school roof and the mold problem, where does that money come from? Is that does the school committee, do you have a portion of your budget that's for like capital improvement projects, or is that a whole separate budget item?
Okay.
I know that's a lot.
Okay. Deb, Jennifer?
You want me to do it first?
Okay, so infrastructure is important because, as you know, unhealthy buildings are not places to put anybody, much less children trying to learn. And staff is important because buildings with either demoralized or stressed, overworked staff don't function either. So the two parts of our town budget, which consists of capital, well, the many parts of town budget, there's an operating part and there's a capital part. And then there is miscellaneous, and then there's unappropriated. So there's four big parts to it. Unappropriated is the things that the state charges whether or not the town council says, go ahead and take that money. So there's really nothing to do about that. The miscellaneous category, as far as I can tell for the town, is primarily retirement contributions that the town makes to pension. So that just leaves, and some of that is kind of, there's some discretion, but for the most part, that's a pretty fixed part of our budget as well. So that just leaves the two parts, capital and the operating, which pays the personnel, again, for the most part of the municipal side. So those are the two competing factors, and both are important. And I think we need to continue to keep that in mind as we continue to advocate for both the building projects and the staffing. To answer your question about the middle school roof, the region, because it is a regional school district, is considered its own municipality. But we cannot, for the most part, I don't understand all the parts of our budget all that well, but for the most part, when we need a large capital cost, we vote for it and that vote, once it passes the regional school committee, gets sent out to the 4 towns to be apportioned out amongst them according to the regional agreement. So that's primarily how we fund things like the middle school roof. Back before COVID, there was authorization to borrow for the middle school roof. So there's still, at least I know in Amherst, that the Amherst portion is about $3 million. We have recently been invited to continue in the Massachusetts School Building Authority accelerated repair program for the middle school roof because it's in such bad condition. We just got an update from our new director of operations about this. Most of the roof will qualify for matching funds more or less from the MSBA, the state. The rest will come from appropriations borrowing authorized from our towns, some of which has already taken place. And there's a middle part for middle school roof that does not qualify. So it's not clear how much that's going to cost, but one of the questions we asked of our director of operations would the MSBA allow us to add that part onto the project as a whole and fund it ourselves 100%. So did I hit all the questions there?
To a certain extent. As a follow-up, I'm curious, what's the anticipated cost to fix the roof, and then why hasn't it been done? It's my understanding that that roof has needed to be fixed since 2017, and we're 8 years out. And if you're saying some borrowing has already occurred to fix it, or some borrowing was approved, why hasn't any of that actually happened? And what is preventing that from happening?
My understanding is that, well, first of all, the last I knew, the roof was estimated about $5 million, and that was years ago. So it's going to be more than that, most likely. The other answer to your question is, I don't know, but I've been told that we were holding out, that the superintendent at the time and the school committee at the time was holding out for MSBA funding. And it wasn't until this year that we've been, that our needs qualified.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well about the roof, is that we've applied for this MSBA grant multiple years in a row, and each time we applied, we were like 1 year short of the number of years old the roof needed to be to qualify, and then we waited till the next year, but then they changed the qualifications so that we kept not being qualified. So it is super frustrating, Jason, and I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you for like why it hasn't been done already, but we are in the queue now for MSBA funding. You had asked, what is the school committee doing to try to help and fix the situation that we find ourselves in every year? And a few things I'll say is that we have members who are, and Deb is one of them, who are in contact with and in close touch with Joe Comerford and Mindy Dom about state funding and advocating for fixing the state formula. Bridget Hines, one of our members, spoke at the Ways and Means Joint Ways and Means Committee hearing that was held at UMass last week, or whatever it was, last month. I think so there's state funding. Then I think that there's this Amherst College as this sort of like shapeless, nebulous force out there that could provide funding or more funding for our school districts that we've talked in the school committee about school committee members directly contacting Amherst College. It's tricky because the gift actually goes to the town, and then the town allocates it, and is Amherst College, are they going to negotiate with the school committee, or are they going to negotiate with the town? It's a little bit tricky. And then, last year when we were in this position, after the budgets were passed, I was a little hot and heavy on pushing for a Proposition 2.5 override. A friend of mine who knows more about this than I did sort of talked me down last year because we had a new superintendent. We wanted to give her a year to sort of like get it. Like it's a complicated process that requires it requires town council buy-in, which I don't know that we have, and it requires the superintendent to be involved in like what more do we need? How much would the override be for? So it's a multi-step and multi-layered process. The town council has like just maybe started talking about, not that they're actually thinking about doing it, but they did have a short presentation about what a Proposition 2.5 override would entail. You know, and when I hear from parents who come to the school committee meetings and they say that they're willing to pay more, the parents like you, Jason, who have young kids, and they're willing to have their property taxes raised, whether that's, you know, obviously not the case for everyone, but I think that's still an idea that could be pursued. All that being said, the school committee has specific obligations and responsibilities that are dictated by law that we are currently working on and dealing with. And I don't know about Deb, but it's exhausting. I'm exhausted. And things like state advocacy and things like pushing for a Proposition 2.5 override and things like pressuring Amherst College, these are things that don't have to be done by school committee members. They can be done by the community and by parents. And I'm really grateful to all of the parents who have become activated in the last year or so. I'm really grateful to Kathleen Mitchell, and I see Ellen Jedry on the call, and I'm so grateful to and you, Jason. I'm so grateful for all the parents who've become activated. And you know, democracy demands that people step up and people get involved. And I'm just going to give a little push for, we're going to have an election this year. Yeah, we have elections in November. All the seats are open. All the town council seats, all the school committee seats are open this November. So if you're frustrated, channel that frustration and get your name on the ballot. I will help you. You can contact me. That will start happening in the summer. Anyway, yeah, like the school committee is doing what we can, but and I'm grateful for the community that has stepped up. But I can see even more happening.
I just,
Yeah.
can I jump in a little bit?
Oh, Deb, yeah.
Yeah, so I have been working at the state level to the extent that I can, and Jennifer's absolutely right. My ambitions were a little high at the beginning of the year, and I had to step back. But I've been working with a group that has really focused on getting the state of Massachusetts to directly pay for our charter school funding. And that's a huge part of our uncontrolled costs. And it's essentially $2 million for each district. So $4 million from both districts go to charter schools for one of the interesting statistics. So it's $2 million out of about $10 million in state aid. Not that the state aid is intended to recover those costs, but before we even get it, the $10 million for each district, there's 20% taken off the top to go to other districts by virtue of the way in which Massachusetts has chosen to fund charter schools. So as I've come to understand, that's one of the largest single things that the state can do to give us some relief. And I don't understand all of the pieces entirely, but there's what's called I don't understand it well enough to explain it, but because we've been more or less level funded by the state, and there's been discussion about reworking and re-looking at the way that those funds are decided, who gets what. And that there was advocacy at the beginning of this year when the new Senate was seated, but that has not come about from, that hasn't come about yet. So if they do look at that, the Chapter 70 funding, that's going to be years out. And it's not clear that our districts will really benefit from that, because we are about $3 million in this buffer. So unless our state funding goes up by $3 million, so up to 13, technically speaking, we will not see any extra dollars in that kind of reform. we're in a relatively unique situation. Not all districts are in the same situation we are in. So the only thing that really is going to help us, unless Chapter 70 many years down the line is reworked, is these kinds of single issue commitments at the state level. One of them being charter school funding. It's incredibly difficult to get support on that because we've met with various representatives and told really that charter school issue is such a contentious one, not contentious, it's well supported by our state Senate, by powerful people in our state Senate. So that really the idea of touching charter school funding is very, very difficult. And in fact, we have not been able to convince Senator Comerford or Rep. Dom to take the lead on that. We have been told that Senator Comerford will be late filing a bill that has some charter school funding issues addressed, but we haven't seen anything yet. So the other big place that we can see some relief just at the regional level, not at the Amherst Elementary School level, is if the state fully funds the regional school amount that the 2022 Regional School Commission said should be $60 million. They funded it for 16 for the last 2 years and consider themselves and have spoken to that being a large amount. So regional school funding and charter school reform or direct funding are the two places we've identified that can help one or two of our districts.
Yeah. Jennifer, you mentioned the Amherst College Fund that's going to the town. And are the schools, Jennifer or Deb, are the schools going to get part of that money that that Amherst College is giving to Amherst Town? And I'm sorry, Miss Pat, I'll call on you as soon as, I just want to get this since we're talking about that. And I'll call on you after if you're interested still in your question.
Yes, there is a portion of the Amherst College gift to the town that was allocated to the elementary district, and it has been applied to next year's budget. I don't remember about regional. Deb, do you remember if there any of that Amherst College Fund is going to the region? I don't remember. You're muted.
Yeah, I can look that up. It's definitely part of what we were using to offset the cuts that we would have had to make had we not gotten it. But I don't remember exactly where it's applied.
At the region.
At the
Right.
region.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that we can, people can ask at the town council meetings and ask that question, you know,
Mhm.
like, yes, there are things important like the roads, et cetera, but the schools are also important. And maybe that's one of the things that people can emphasize. And Ms. Pat, did you still have a question?
Hello, can people hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we
Good
can.
evening, everyone.
Oh,
I don't have any question. I just have a comment to make. So first of all, Jennifer, Deb, Queen, Andrea, the league, everyone on the audience, thank you all for this gathering tonight. My comment is that being a 40-year Amherst resident, it's still beyond me why our budget truly does not reflect our values, because we tend to emphasize a lot on infrastructure. And we are talking about not, going into budget deficit. And at the same time, we're also talking about building Jones Library that we cannot afford. And I just want to use this opportunity to, express my sympathy to some school employees that I've been communicating with low morale. Even if, some of them may not lose their job, they're very concerned about some of their colleagues. And I can imagine, what they're going through. I also find out just recently, yesterday, that, even in our town government, there is low morale, and we may not even have DEI or even CREST as we know it. And so, if I say I'm frustrated, would be understatement, because budget's supposed to reflect people's value. We all do our personal budget for our family, of ourselves, and in what our local government is doing, I don't understand it. One of my observations with the town council is that most of the members don't have kids in the school system anymore. It would be great, like Jennifer rightly pointed out, this year is election year. I really encourage parents who have young children to consider running. We need to change the makeup of the town council because resources are not well distributed in our town. I think the school committee are doing their best, doing the advocacy, and it can be very exhausting. So I appreciate them. That's all I want to say. I don't have any questions. It's just I'm not happy with what is happening in our town. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm willing to pay additional tax on my, my property. I think if we want to go to that, direction, and I get that some people have fixed income. My husband is retired, so, but anything that will place more value on human needs, I'm all for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Don't get me started.
Yeah.
Because everybody here knows that I do not agree with this kind of government. I've lived under it all my life. It is not successful. I cried when town meeting was closed. So, but then I only taught the subject. So what do I know? Anyway, anybody else have some questions? Thank you so much for all this information. This is really, really very instructive. Jason, you have another question.
Yes, thank you. This this may be something somewhat controversial, but I've heard that our new superintendent has hired a social media manager. And I was curious, one, if that's true, if that position is in the budget, and if it is that person doing something other than managing social media? And if not, why would the superintendent need a social media manager for a district the size of ours when we're asking, like, or when there's a proposal for like orchestra and other folks to be at like 90% as opposed to full time?
I think I can answer that. I think you're referring to Seth, who is the communications and media specialist. So he does do more than social media. He manages all of the communications between the superintendent and parents. And I have to say, as someone who's my daughter's in 10th grade and she's been in this system since kindergarten at Crocker Farm, this is the most communication we've gotten from the superintendent ever. The superintendent and past superintendents would never even email about school committee meetings, and the amount of communication that's coming out of Dr. Z's office is impressive. So I'm personally pleased with that. So Seth, as far as I can tell, I don't know exactly, but he handles all of the email communications with parents as well as communicating with the press and the public whenever public statements need to be made. He does manage social media, and I think that the social media presence of the Amherst schools has been really good and really positive. And I think that's not the only part of his job, as I just said. But I think the reason our district and any district needs social media is because we want to tell the story about the wonderful things that are happening in our district. often, especially this time of year, it's only negatives in in the press about the budget crisis and negative things that are happening at the negative things associated with the school district. We want to put the story out about positive things so that so that the community can see all of the wonderful things that are happening in the schools, and so that to support things like people not choicing their kids out because they see that positive things are happening in the school, and to support like people being willing to step up and whatever, have their taxes raised or speak at the school committee meeting or town council because they see the positive things that are happening in the district. So I would push back and saying that the district doesn't need social media, but I think it does. And I think that I think they're doing a good job at it. And it's not this person's only job. And I think Seth has been a really great addition to our district.
Sorry, I want to clarify. I don't necessarily think that it's not necessary to have the outreach. I was just, with that title, it seems like that's the only, and I don't have any social media, so I don't see any of it. And
Oh.
I'm probably, certainly for my generation, an oddball in that situation, not having it. But with that title, it just seems like that's all that person does.
Yeah, I don't think that's Seth's official title. I think he is the social media manager because he manages social media, but that's not all of his job. He's the communications and media specialist, I think. I might be getting that wrong, but he does more than just social media.
Okay. Rich?
Hi, thank you. First, I just wanted to thank the League of Women's Voters for doing this. I relied on the League of Women Voters for years when trying to vote. So thank you for all your work. I wanted to ask about pilot payments from UMass. Oftentimes when the conversation comes up, people seem to default to Amherst College, which I think is a really important thing for us to pursue. But in terms of trying for more state advocacy, I was wondering if anyone has any knowledge or information about what pilot payments look like at some of the other UMass schools, in terms of total amount given or amount relative to the town, if this might be a productive avenue for state level advocacy. Thanks.
Jennifer, who? Deb? Where's Deb?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I don't know about other UMass campuses. There is something called a UMass partnership. That's an agreement between that has recently been renewed between the town and UMass to give certain funds to the town in compensation for emergency services and to some extent the school. So there is an amount, and I can't tell you off the top of my head how much it is. I think it's $100,000 a year, but don't quote me on that. And I think it's divided up that the bulk of it goes to the elementary schools. Given that negotiation is complete, I think this goes back to something Jennifer said before about Amherst College. And where do we sit in that? I don't know. There are many private institutions that pay a fair amount to, again, in the eastern part of the state, to their municipalities. But I don't know about the state ones.
Okay. I was just looking. Someone mentioned something about the Department of Education. Have you had, as far as you can know, had any effect of the possibility of dismantling of Department of Education and some of those things that are doing federally? Is this impacting yet our school district yet? I mean, or does it look like it's coming down the road? I mean, I'm just curious to know what kind of, have you had any correspondence with from anybody, or, nothing?
I do not know. I do not know of anything yet. I have not heard anything. We haven't been informed of anything from the superintendent.
Okay. I'm a little worried because the president of the United States does not know that most schools are funded by states, and the federal government money is the extra that helps with food for hungry children and all these other things. I'm fascinated by the fact that he thinks the federal government supports the schools and then the states put a little bit in. So I know we're in trouble. But hopefully we will continue to pass the budget. Can you tell us, okay, can you just go over some of the ways that we as citizens can do more or can get out there and get the word out? Ms. Pat gave a suggestion that people need to run, somebody else, several people have said that. Give us some ideas as to what we can do to support you guys and to support the schools. Let's just make it, as we end this session, I want to go away with some ideas of what things we can do that will help you.
I think in the immediate, it's putting pressure on the town council, showing up at their meetings, which are not every Monday, but every other Monday. Check out the agendas on the town website and sign up to make public comment. Making public comment in person or on Zoom, I think is more immediate and impactful than sending an email, because the emails, public comment emails to the town council sort of, I don't know, go into the ether, and I'm not sure that the public ever sees them. So I think that showing up in person or on Zoom for a town council meeting, giving public comment, stating your support for the schools and your support for not giving every town department the same % increase. Equality is not equity, et cetera, et cetera. I think for the immediate, that's what comes to mind.
Okay.
I put the bill in the chat. It's just a House Bill 4439 that we have sponsorship on, just to reimburse low and moderate income districts for sending costs to charter schools. So there's always opportunity for advocacy there. It is worthwhile telling our state legislators who are in the process of crafting their budget that this part of Massachusetts voted strongly for the Fair Share Amendment. And depending on where you look, there's been a lot of money put towards infrastructure and higher education. And I can't say that those things don't need it, but I really feel like K through 12 has not been well represented in those funds, and there's a spending cap on, even though the funds have come in much higher than expected, there's a fair amount of surplus in the fair share funding, and it's sitting in the bank. So it'd be really nice if they spread that money around a little bit. So that's an opportunity. There's a public, I don't know if there's still open spots, but there's a public forum on the budget on April 8th. And you can attend by Zoom. So that's an opportunity to talk to the state. And our town council or individual members of the town council have repeatedly said, gee, those parents are awfully good at advocating for their needs, which is what parents do. Well, advocating for the needs of their families. But it is great to hear other voices saying, we support the schools too. In particular, District 1 has not heard a lot about, well, have said they have not heard a lot from their constituents about the need for supporting increased school funding, but they have heard a lot about potholes. So there's things to do at all levels. If Anna Gauthier, Devin Gauthier is able to, her motion to open up this year's financial guidelines to the town manager to reconsider this whole equal funding issue was on the agenda for the 4th of March, but it got very late and they voted to postpone that. So I expect, and I haven't looked yet if the agenda's out, but I expect that to be an issue in for this upcoming Monday. So you could find out if that's going to happen and let people know that you think it's a great idea.
Very good. Have just a quick question, and I don't know how much you know about it because, you know, you're the school committee or whatever, but are you seeing an absence of children of immigrant parents not coming to schools? Some of is the attendance getting more kids not coming? People are afraid to send their children. Is that happening with us, as far as you know?
Not as far as we've been told.
Okay. That may
We
be,
haven't been told one way or the other, I
Yeah.
guess. It's sort of
Okay.
what she said.
so that would be a question that we need to ask also at, for the town council to check out also. And Jason, you have another, question or comment?
Yes, but Martha's had her hand up a long time
Oh, I'm
before
sorry,
me,
Martha.
so I'd
I saw you.
defer to her.
All right,
Yeah, Martha, I'm sorry.
I'll be quick. Just one other thing that maybe people could lobby about. Follow up to Adrian Teresi's question of, do you have a seat at the table? You know, right now there's a charter review commission going on of, you know, proposed changes to the charter for the town council. And after hearing this discussion tonight, it seems that maybe we should be lobbying with them to think hard about how the school committee could be more integrated into the budget discussions, or, you know, somehow do it differently, because I feel that you folks in the end, after all your hard work, don't have much power in the final decisions, and that kind of concerns me. So may I suggest that people contact the members of the Charter Review Commission and ask them about that?
Somebody wrote, there's one vacant seat open for the review committee, you know, so, okay. And Jason, now.
Thank you. This question may be more so for the folks in the Women's League of Voters, but do you support like ballot initiative measures, and do you have resources on how to get a ballot initiative on the ballot? And specifically, I'm thinking more for funding. Are we, the citizens, allowed to, or let me preface this way. I'm on the Conservation Commission, and I served as the CPAC, the Conservation Commission representative to CPAC, CPA, and there was like $2.9 million in the budget this year for CPA. And I was told that that's a 3% surcharge on property taxes. It used to be 1.5%, but then the town voted to increase it to 3%. I don't know if that vote was a ballot initiative by the voters and the citizens. And if so, can we put a ballot initiative together to reduce that back to 1.5% and take the additional 1.5% and divert that to schools? Is that something that we can do, or is that something that the league does? And then how, if so, how do we support that? And then as far as advocacy is concerned, the parents have been showing up to a lot of these meetings, and it would be great to have people who are not parents but live in town also show up, or the league to show up in force saying, hey, we support this. Because I was told two things. One, that there are several people on the town council who say, oh, you parents, you just come to the meetings and you say the same things over and over and over again. And it's very dismissive. And then as far as District 1 is concerned, I know many parents in District 1 who reach out to their rep and who has then just said, oh, I never hear from anybody, which is just a flat out lie. So, you know, I'm just curious about how the league would support both ballot initiatives potentially, and then advocacy at town council meetings. So it's not just parents.
Rebecca? Would you like to respond to that? She is our spokesperson.
I was afraid of this. I think I would have to get back to you on that. We typically do not take positions on budget matters. But as Adrian pointed out, we do have very strong positions on schools, which obviously relate to funding, as we've been talking about. So I would have to look into the protocol and the procedure for, changing the way funding gets diverted to the CPA funds, etc. So if you could you send me an email? Just send the league an email and I'll get it and then I can respond.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Andrea,
Uh-huh.
it's Adrian. May I
Yes.
jump in a minute?
Absolutely.
It's in answer to Jason's question. How did we go from 1.5% for the Community Preservation Act to 3%? Martha, I think you can follow this up with even more information. It came before town meeting, Jason. The body that brought it forward, I am uncertain of, so that's one thing I'd like to tip over to Martha. But we voted 3% on the floor of town meeting. I believe it was brought to us by the CPA committee because year after year, after it was established at 1.5% for town residents to support it, there was so many requests, vital requests for CPA funding that it seemed to make sense back in a better economic time when we weren't faced with 4 large public projects that there was, I believe, an overwhelming vote to go for 3%. Now I'll turn it over to Martha. Martha, what did I get wrong?
I don't have any information. I'm afraid I don't remember the specifics, so.
Well, that's something that I do recall. I sat on the floor of town meeting for many years. I hope that helped a little bit, Jason.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
We can look into it though and see, things changed and it's gonna keep going, but that's okay. You all wanted this kind of government, so good luck. I'm not a fan. I'm sorry. 60 years living under it never works. But anyway,
I miss town meeting a lot, actually.
I very much miss town meeting, so anyway, I was so happy as a teacher of social studies and constitutional law. I was very happy. And then I was made sad. So what can I tell you? But anyway, I've been warning you, it doesn't get better. Anyway, but we can work together and make them do things and make people try to help people who want to run for town council, because there are people there that are trying to work for all of us. And we really need to think about it, as how we can support each other and people who, because that's it's a lot. When you take on positions like that, I mean, I do understand. I mean, I'm retired, but nobody thinks I'm really retired because I'm on 500 things. But again, we need people who are going to work for the people, for the children, etc., and make priorities important.
Can I say something about running for town meeting? Running for town council, which I'm not going to do, but I feel that the perception is that town council members and town council meetings, the meetings go so late and they're so onerous and the town councilors work so hard and the meetings are so late. But my opinion, after watching this town council for many years, is that that is due to the way the town council is run by the current town council president, who has been the president the entire time that we've had a town council. I think it doesn't have to be that way. A lot of the decisions that are made about how the meetings are run and how late the meetings go and what's on the agenda and all that stuff, that's all just the way the town council is run by the current president. And as I said, there hasn't been another president. So another president would maybe not run the meetings the same way, and they might not go so late and be so onerous. It almost feels like, well, how could they not? How could it be different? But it can be different. So it doesn't, don't try not to be, and tell your friends, try not to be intimidated at the idea that being a town councilor is so onerous and a lot of work. I see a question in the chat about how do we get another president. The town council members elect their president. So the voters elect the town council members. The town council members elect their president. So that's the answer.
I want to just jump in here about the Charter Review Commission, because one of the things that I think is important to know about the existing charter that I didn't know is that the council president also appoints the finance committee members, and they are the people who draft the financial guidelines to that then get referred back to town council, who then vote on it and send it off to the town manager. And I would say that there is more diversity in opinions about the needs of the schools on the town council itself than there is on finance committee, including the non-voting resident members. So that's an important place within the both within the existing structure to pay attention to and to provide feedback for, and perhaps to fill with a different voice. But it's also an important part of looking at how the funding decisions are made and whether or not finance committee itself represents even those 13 people on town council. And I think that's an important part of the Charter Review Commission to pay attention to.
Somebody asked a question in the chat about the town council. No, somebody asked, does the town council appoint the town manager as well?
Yes, the town council appoints the town manager and evaluates the town manager.
Right.
That's what you call it. Okay. Anyway. Yeah.
Rebecca. Yes.
Might as well be. Rebecca?
Yeah, I just want to put in a plug for SOS Amherst and the League of Women Voters are sponsoring a program about school funding. So if you want to keep, we're hoping you'll continue this conversation. It'll be a chance for people to ask questions and brainstorm, sort of promote their vision for the schools. Kathleen, you're welcome to jump in here if you're listening. It's from 2 to 4 at Crocker Farm, and there will be childcare available, and it should be a really good discussion. So we're hoping all of you will come and you'll tell your friends and your neighbors. We're hoping that more than just parents, not just parents, but more, we're hoping the whole community will show up for this to learn more.
When is it, the date?
That's April 13th from 2 to 4 at Crocker Farm.
Yeah, hi, this is Kathleen. I will just add that we really hope it will be a collaborative conversation with folks talking in groups and really brainstorming about how we can move this conversation forward and keep the ideas flowing. So April 13th, 2 to 4 p.m., Crocker Farm. And we will have childcare, children's activities, children working on their own brainstorming, and it should be a great afternoon. So please join us. Thanks.
Thank you. Good idea with people who can make that. Okay. I just want to put in did somebody else? I don't want to miss anybody. Our next Judy Brooks series is going to be on this month, the 17th of April, and it's going to be about the mobile market. And I don't know if Rainey wants to say anything, but it's going to be a few people that work with it, and I think people should really, we're going to try to promote it and have people come. It's the 17th of April. Do you want to say anything, Rainey?
I would just say that the mobile market targets a population that's often not heard from, definitely not seen very much. And so I think it will be educational to learn about these segments of our community in Amherst through the market and its activities, which is more than selling stuff. So I hope you'll come.
Okay, if you get more information, come to on the 17th, same time, you register the same way. It's already up with the League of Women Voters Amherst. So, and definitely come on the 13th of April at Crocker Farm if you can. Miss Pat, somebody else raised a hand. Did I see somebody try?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Anyway, we will be sending promotions, and we have a thing set up already for the mobile market. And I think it's a learning experience because a lot of people don't even know about it, and it's really kind of important. So anyway, anybody else have comments, questions that they want to make? I would really like to thank Jennifer and Deb. I really appreciate both of you. You've given us a lot to think about. I've learned a lot. I felt like I knew things about it, but I've learned a lot. So I wish you success. I hope that somehow we can convince them to not make everything equal, because everything is not equal. And I hope that the schools get more so that they can benefit for the children and for the town in general.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for inviting Deb and me. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. Anybody else want anything to say or say goodbye? Don't forget, the next meeting is going to be even more interesting because a lot of you don't know. You'll learn something new, and it's going to kind of be really important, especially now. So anyway, okay. Oh, before you leave, as you leave, there will come, once you push leave, you'll see a survey. We'd appreciate it if you'd fill it out. It'll take you 2 minutes at the most, just to ask you about what you just witnessed, and just simple 4 or 5 questions, please, because we do report to the state, and then they report to the National League, and we'd like them to know what we're doing, because we are doing a lot of things. So we really want to keep that into that whatever. So when you leave, before you just close your computer or your whatever, just fill that out. It's only 3 or 4 questions, 5 questions, something like that. I fill it out also. So thank you. And don't forget the 17th. Bye-bye, everyone. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for hosting this. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, especially people who have asked the questions. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.